We're live.
Yeah, baby.
Just going. Okay, what's up, guys? John Sentez, Cutternation podcast number 73. But first, please help us out. The show is growing. It's exciting. We're following the numbers. We're getting more and more listeners, more and more shares. So thank you to everybody that has been doing that. Also, you can check out the website, cutternation.net. You have the apparel. You can get our hats. We're shipping them out. We've got gear. We've got awesome shirts. These things feel amazing. They're probably the best things to throw in. I tell everybody that all the time. It's my number one undershirt. Wouldn't mess with anything else. But without further ado, Michael, I'm not even going to try your last name. That's just
Pilhofer.
We're just going to call him Mike. We're just going to go Michael. What's up, Mike?
I'm doing well. Where's my hat? Although I'm not a hat wearing guy, but like now I'm feeling left out.
I can join you.
Ooh. Yeah, maybe.
All right,
Here,
I'll introduce Michael a little bit more formally. So, Michael is a former coach of mine, and I'll call him like a lifelong coach of mine because he was somebody that I went to. He taught me kind of the fundamentals of Olympic lifting, but then also, I was very transparent with him right away. Like, I want to be coached by you, and I want to like pick your brain of how you coach, and that was a fun conversation. So we had some. Behind the scenes, we talked a little business. I remember talking social media at a coffee shop at one point. But anyway, so in my opinion, one of the best guys in the Twin Cities, if not the Midwest. And just like coming from a different background, Michael is a musician turned movement freak. And I use that affectionately because I know that that's very accurate. And a lot of people have heard us talk about ourselves as like baseball psychos and anyway, so Michael runs a place called MSP Fitness. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about what you're doing now? And let's go backwards. 2020 MSP Fitness, go backwards. Here you go.
Yeah. You mean like start from today and work backwards, or give it back
I don't know.
to get to
I
today?
Don't know. Yeah, whatever. I'm just saying. Say words back.
Yeah, I do think it's interesting though, because my path to movement is a little different. I mean, everyone's got a different path, but in the end, I was a full-time professional drummer and musician to start out. That led into, and people have always asked, I go, how did you get into, fitness? And I actually sort of reframe the question in the sense that it was very early on in my early 20s that I found teaching, music education at that point. And really teaching is the theme for the last 30 years of my life. I mean, different mediums. I mean, hell, I taught motorcycle safety through the state of Minnesota. I mean, but the idea is I have built a career and a profession of listening, observing, and identifying and connecting with humans and watching and seeing things and, listening and understanding the psychology of a human being and movement and put all that together. And whether it was music, I mean, drumming is obviously in music, it's a very formal, and the application of drumming, a very physical instrument. So there's movement there. But that just sort of kept moving along until eventually, fitness that was sort of a personal passion became sort of that's more, and then I'm going to start following some smart people and some smarter people than me. And then that kind of got to like, gosh, I really enjoy this, to like watching people move, being like, I might have an idea for you, but like, well, who the hell am I? Who's going to listen to me? And then that just feathered into eventually apprenticing other people and following some brilliant, master coaches that I've had the joy of working with over the years, a couple of decades. And then eventually, and I always say this truly, thanks to my wife, she is the absolute number one reason why I had the guts and the support to open my business a little over 11 years ago, which is insane. 2009, and here I am now, 2020, and 11 years later, and MSP Fitness, is what it is. And I do consider myself a coach. I like that word because I feel like that's really important because it's a much more holistic, encompassing relationship rather than like trainer, personal trainer, stuff like that. Like I'm a coach. Like it's the full 360-degree comprehensive relationship of movement and person that I love to connect with. That's when I'm the most fulfilled.
It's funny because one of the first things John talked about when I was around him was how he doesn't want to be called a coach. But it's the same thing you're talking about, right? Making sure that people are accurately identifying what this relationship is supposed to be. And the general, in our world, it tends to be the coach is a little bit too stuffy, my way or the highway, and we want to be that kind of like counterculture. So just ironic, but same concept behind that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just gonna go in this because I like going in the music side, and I want to be able to maybe pull some things out of that, because I'm a music guy, but I'll at the same time I've kind of been a jock my whole life, and so it's like the patterns. And so the thing that John's been really interested with me saying is kind of what I've been going through just in life has really brought me close to music in the last 6 months. And Jordan Peterson has kicked off this idea that, well, first off, the idea that he brought to my mind is nobody's sitting around arguing about music. Like, nobody's like, yeah, we should or should not have music. It's like, yeah, this is universally accepted that this is important. Nobody's doubting that this is important, and that's so interesting. And so I also have, like, I've played my trumpet more than I ever have in a long time. I played my guitar a lot. I've been singing more, and it's with the realization that you don't know how, you don't have to play the right notes. And I was always in jazz, and so I always felt the need to, like, know how to be cheeky with it. But I haven't just, like, gotten to learn to connect the whole entire thing to who I am, right? So simply just playing, like, almost thoughtlessly, there's something, like, really intense to that. So anyway, that's been my experience. But what I've been sharing with John is this: to understand music theory from the outside, I think it's simply that somebody who understands music theory can go, oh, this is going along, and I'm anticipating that this person is going to be cheeky right here, and there they were. And so you just know the roadmaps, what they're supposed to look like, and when somebody deviates from that. And so the reason why somebody can't listen to jazz is because it's all cheeky, like it's all like it's almost obnoxious, right? On purpose. Anyway, so I'm just talking about, like, this rhythm, this here we go, and then it has to be something different. That's what makes, like, music interesting, is that the predictability of it, and then oh, look at what you did there, isn't that funny? Yep. And that we don't even have to say anything, that we can do it with just noise. I don't necessarily know the parallel that I've been using that with, but go ahead.
Well, no, so in the music education side of things, and I got pretty deep into that. I taught college for 8 years, high school for 3. In a parallel universe, the high school job that I had, I literally could have retired in that job. I got laid off because of 9/11 back in the day, and my district got thrown up with a whole bunch of, I think it was a $16 million deficit, and everybody was freaked out, so nobody wanted to, they voted down the deficit, so of course all the new teachers get canned. But all along in music, they always talk about, and this will parallel back. This is how I converse, so just bear with me.
You're awesome.
We go over here, and then we come back to the center. There's always, to your point, but maybe a little bit of a contrary perspective, there's always seems like a justification for the purpose of music. Like, how many times have we seen articles where, like, music makes you smarter? Like, people who do music, like, do better in the SATs. And it's like, I've always argued or been frustrated with that, because, like, while I understand that mindset, it's like, wait a minute, like, I don't need another validation to give me reason and justification for why creating music and being a part of building and participating in music has merit. It has merit on its own. And I would parallel this to sometimes to the realm of fitness. Let's see if we can connect these dots, where I think the danger sometimes in fitness is we're so outcome specific. It's always like, what are your goals? Like, let's get you, you want that one pull-up. Oh, okay, and we'll get you to, and then, like, it's always these little, like, or it's the 12-week this class, or it's the 6-month that class. And, like, why don't we just talk about the value and the purpose of learning how our body works? Doesn't have to just mechanically, just individually. Like, how does it work? Like, what are some good things that we can do that help us make us more resilient human beings? Let's connect our mind to our body so we can, like, understand and enjoy those things. And why isn't that just valid on its own? And I think part of it is that people, if you really start digging into, and this is, could be a little dangerous, because it's probably admitting that a lot of people are participating in fitness maybe for the wrong reasons. But I like to look at it like, this is just part of why you do what you do. I mean, movement is life. Good, doesn't, heavy deadlifts, that's a different conversation, but learning how to pick shit up, like, that's not fitness, that's life. Learning how to squat down and grab something, being able to have the ability to raise your arm overhead, Like this, I'm not talking heavy clean and jerks. I'm talking about fucking grabbing something from your counter and putting it in a, when we're 80. Like that's to like, I don't know. Does that make any sense, or am I just talking to myself?
No, yeah. And I'm sitting here going like, and then the music thing is that it's the instrument, and that like what I have realized is that it's actually the way that I'm communicating with the instrument, and that's all that matters. And then if somebody wants to like pay attention to that, that's cool, but who cares? Because everybody's in their different spot. And so like music, it's so challenging because it's like you can't do that without people noticing. Like go play your trumpet without people noticing. Like you literally have to go out of your way to make that happen in most people's situation. And for fitness, I feel like there's so many unhealthy relationships with the instruments that we have, right? And it's like, it's this, Taylor brought it up, Gish, earlier this week. It's just like, I'm using barbells because it fits. It's like the best solution for my environment and my situation right now. But we all know that those kids are using kettlebells and other implements in their training as well. But like just having that perspective, that's where I sit and go back and forth between music, because you can't play music. You can't be a musician without coming to these realizations. You don't get very far. Right. But the stakes are so much higher in that, right? You can't go that far in music. Like you can continue to have sports throughout your life. You don't see a lot of people like casually play. I mean, I'm one of the only people that I know that played music casually in college. It's just not common. Do you know what I mean? I just happened to be in a situation where, I was at a place that music was not important at that university, and that's okay. But anyway, these are the things that I go back and forth on, and just like learning how to practice music, how similar that is, the patience that you need, how you have to slow things down and then like speed things up. Like if you could play a song twice as fast, the value of that, right? And that's where it's like, oh, if you can throw the ball twice as fast by throwing something lighter than what we normally throw, like it's just all of these things go back and forth. So anyway, I don't know.
Well,
I go.
I was gonna say, and well, now if you start going down the rabbit hole of like educating or teaching within the context or medium of music, there's tons of parallels in. But now I think we're just talking about good teaching principles. A classic music term is whole part whole, where if you think about a piece of music, you want to, like a painting. I can't remember, is it Monet? Who's the brilliant artist that does it's little points of, it's like little dots that create, So same thing in music. I mean, you need, while you can get myopic and talk about one thing, and this can think about this as a parallel in fitness, or a movement or a complex movement, you can get down to the fucking minutia, but if you don't see the whole thing, like forget about it. Like you're never going to be able to apply. So being able to, in a musical environment, hear the whole, fine tune the part, take it back to the whole. Think of a complex movement. You talked about Olympic lifting as a great example. It's like a clean or a jerk or a snatch. Like, holy cow, there are a million little minutia pieces and exercises that we can break down this phenomenally complex, beautiful movement into this sliver, and you can just paralyze somebody because they'll never see the big thing. And that the eloquence of guiding an athlete through when it's necessary to get to the minutia, but when we have to just be okay with the macro. Like it's okay that I don't care. Like, I can't tell you how many times a client of mine has missed the lift, and I'm like, that was fucking awesome, like perfect, because we were working on one piece of this puzzle, and they did that one piece beautifully. But that something else was still broken, so the lift failed. And in their mind, it's like, well, then that was shit. It was broken. I didn't know, I'm wrong. And I'm like, no, that was great. Like that was exactly what we wanted. Just divorce yourself from the later part that fucked up. Yeah, we missed the lift. But you pulled beautifully. You transitioned over the kneecap beautifully. Yeah, the rest of the pull was shit. We'll get to that. That's where that coach-client thing is so important, because if they're on their own, they would never know the eloquence of. They would just see it as failure.
Yeah. It's funny. Like it's such a. It's just the placement of your encouragement. It's so much about and yeah, you like that. Well, okay, good. So here's a funny thing about training with Michael. And I knew this was good for me, but it was annoying So the way that Michael's set up is very similar to ours. And we talked about, by the way, like, I don't know if we haven't got to have this conversation actually. So when I was in Minnesota training with Michael, I was very frustrated with the lack of system. So John, this is where like he's doing something very similar to us, where we have private, he's writing my program, but it's like kind of watching me, kind of not. And at the beginning, this was so frustrating for me because I'm such a needy prick. And like, right, like, look at me, I'm here. And but over the long haul, it's obviously this relationship of like, you have to trust yourself to do this on your own, while also knowing when to ask me questions. Because if you ask me questions all the time now, like, which is, I had to pick my moments, and these were things that I needed to do anyway. And we see that all the time in baseball, where it's just like, the expectation from, whether it's kids, whether it's parents, who knows where the expectations come from, but there's this handheld, like, I need to carry them along all the way, where it's like, the best of the best are so good at, it's not like, I think just because it's become so popular, it's like, it's not teaching them how to fail. Like, it's just learning how to encourage the moments that matter the most, right? Those moments where they might not make it out on their own, and you're right there, because you're watching. Yes. We had Brandon LaRue on. I'm just going to say this one more thing, because that's the watching thing. Brandon LaRue talks about it all the time. Well-built humans. He's a Minnesota guy. But like, kids are always watching, right? And so if you are just always watching them back, it's really easy to like catch their attention and get them locked in on you. I see this with dogs. I'm at my sister's right now, and when I pay attention to her dogs, they are so mad at me because they think that I'm being dominant. And so I have to like play this stupid game with them of like, okay, I'm not paying attention to you. And then they come over and I'm like, oh my goodness, where did you come from? And these are just simple little things. So anyway, I'm getting off on tangents, but go. Yeah.
Well, I'll just touch on one thing, and then I think, John, you might have had a question. I think you're touching on maybe what is a deeper philosophy for me, which is empowerment is maybe the fancier word, but it's why I hate personal training. Personally, like I call it personal coaching. It's just my stupid way of justifying why I want to charge somebody an relatively exorbitant, but valuable exchange. Because if we're going to spend an hour together, like, we're going to coach you for the hour. I'm not going to count reps and ask you about your family. Like, that's what personal training ends up becoming. And I think, to your point, which is why I love my most favorite relationship with clients is this relationship you and I had, which is sort of a guided one coach, one client relationship, where I'm devising training specific to their needs. We've gone through all the appropriate assessments and we've had conversations, but in the end, you have to fail a little bit. Failure is feedback. You have to learn. You have to get inside of yourself and fight a little bit for it, and then have that security blanket, which is the coach that's next to you, or a phone call away, or a text away, that can come in and guide you a little bit and hold you back from complete obliteration of your mind. But that relationship to me is glorious, because in the end, I am trying to either coach myself out of that current moment so that we can get to something more rich, or to some degree, I want to give you the tools. I don't want to keep the tools. That's just stupid. That's annoying, and it's arrogant. Okay, I'll stop talking. Next.
No, but John, did you have something? Sorry.
No, I'm fine. I'm listening. This is great, because I'm seeing parallels in the same thing back to, where kids don't. The empowerment idea was exactly what we talk about, and we enjoy groups. Like, there's a difference of like group training and one-on-one stuff, and it just never felt good to me to like charge so much money for like a one-on-one session, when it's like, I could actually make this more fun in a better situation with more people, and then you can learn more, and then and so we change age ranges, and we have college kids with like 9-year-olds, and like it's it just really just works out nicely in the environment and the culture that we create, because we can see how it's affecting both kids, because you get to go over to the big kids and be like, hey, you're setting an example for a 9-year-old, right? And just be a nice human, like, just do your part, like, help him enjoy the game, and then you go to the 9-year-old and you go, hey, check out this guy. He's in college. Isn't that cool? he's playing college baseball, you know, and they're like, oh man. So, you know, I agree totally with what you're saying and the parallels to what the psyche and how everything goes. Because it's, as a trainer, you want to do the best for the kids, you know?
So
I
I'm
love
curious.
sorry,
Go.
go ahead. No, I was just going to say,
No.
I love it went by quickly, so I hope people heard it. I don't do a lot of young kid training. I have a phenomenal, just because he's a great kid. I have a 16-year-old weightlifter that came to me at 15, and he's just turned 17. But like, I haven't done much young youth training. But I love what you said when you talked about be a good human. Like, let's talk about things that the broader coach that we can be to these young people, and what we can really teach them about. And that is something that should not be overlooked. So I love that you said that, because that's like, yeah, let's talk about being a good human being. We're not just talking about throwing shit or picking up shit or whatever. Like, yeah, we'll do that. However, you know, because this little kid, I shouldn't say kid, he's a high school, you know, but he's a kid. I'm old. I mean, he's in my gym, you know, around 30, 40, 50-year-old. I mean, my full adult population. And he's like, just great kid. And it's the only reason why I have him working with me, because he can work in that environment, and to watch him grow. And I love everything that isn't about weightlifting that I've seen him develop. And I feel like a part of our relationship has helped that development. And how fun is that? How fun is that to have that level of touch in a young person, you know, and what that's going to translate to as they move on into their adult years. So
some of our favorite clients are like 9 and 10 years old, or 12, and then have been with us for 2 or 3 years, you know?
Yep.
And so it's just, and Cass and I've only been working together for a little over a year, but since the genesis of me and here in San Diego, he's met the majority of the kids have been for a long time. And it's just like, you know, Cass, have you ever told him about your first day? Like, I still think about it every once in a while when you bring it up, because like, well, no, it was just he showed up, and then we had conversation, and then he was just watching this assembly line of just like 10-year-olds just rip balls into this target with a radar gun on the screen. And to his point, he had thought of that idea before. So to see it, you know, was like, oh.
Well, in all fairness, a lot of people have thought about this. Like, there's a lot of people doing a similar thing, you know, not to the extent like John's twist on it all. You know, yeah, it's very similar in that standpoint. I'm just so caught up on like the kid going back and forth. One thing that I thought of was like we had like that closing thing, Michael, and one thing that I don't know if you remember me saying this, but Michael is so selective in who trains with him. Like, you don't just like, this is very like, we were talking about it with Bleecker. There's a baseball place up in Riverside, California, north of us, does the same thing. You have to apply to go through this training process. And I think there's such an importance, like the theme there is be who you are and surround yourself with people who are going to support that culture. And that's what's so impressive about, you know, being at your gym is you're doing that on purpose. So you know that the people around you are going to be very, you know, like-minded in ways, right? And then completely different in other ways. But
it's funny too, because, you know, I mean, we've all as probably business owners have gone down the rabbit holes of, you know, client acquisition. I mean, that whole nightmare, right? And I've done different dabbles with, you know, business coaches or whatever, and they'll always talk about like your demographic. What's your demographic look like? You know, what kind of, and I'm like, it's not a demographic, dude. It's a psychographic. Like, what's inside of
I like
here?
how you said that. Yeah, I like how you said that.
It's like, I don't care if you're, I don't care if you're 16 or 60, like to Cass's point. I've definitely, I don't want to say roadblocks, but I've definitely put, it's not easy to just show up. Like, my gym is never a gym that you were, well, most recently, more in the recent couple, you know, decade, when I have to be fully transparent. I opened as a CrossFit gym when I first started. We can talk all about that if you want. But that being said, that was a historical reality. But you've got layers to go through, and in-person conversations need to happen to see if this is a good fit. And most of the time, it's really about, you know, exposing them to me, because anybody who's going to come into my gym and be a part of the community has to go through me. It has to go through a conversation, an assessment, a sit down, and that already sort of culls the field a pretty decent amount. But in the end, like, I want the right people that have the right mindset, and I have the joy, because it's my name on the door. I can kind of establish what that community is going to look and feel like, because it's you know, that's the reason why I opened my own business. It may not be the best business practice, but it makes me the most satisfied when I sit there and just kind of observe amongst the world and just see all these wonderful men and women that are coming.
It's a good human practice. Good human practice.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Definitely.
So.
Oh, okay. So then the other thing about the age thing, because I was going to ask you, so you talked about things being appropriate versus not, and like how micro you're going to get versus how macro you're going to get. I don't even know that how age it is. Like, I'm curious your perspective on it, because like we have some young kids that just want to hear it a different way. And when we start telling them like, hey, if you know where your hands and feet are, like they all of a sudden are connected with that. So I'm not saying every single one of them are, but it's interesting. So I'm curious, like when you talk about, because I know you and I can go as deep as any, right?
Mm-hmm.
How common is that in your clients, and how much do you have to dial back?
Yeah. That's a good question. I'd say we'd have to first just sort of identify the two population differences. The individual clients of mine that I work with, more one-on-one. Exclusive coaching is the fancy term of the program, but essentially individualized training. And then the small group program that I have, and I have been a little more hands-off on that program in general, but all of those people go through me to get to the gym in the first place. So they all know me, and it's a small place, right? I mean, I have one coach that works with me and me. So it's intimate. It's like you guys. I think that's a very good question, and I generally let the client lead that conversation because I have seen it all too often where it's, I'm gonna laugh at Taylor a little bit, and hopefully he's not gonna laugh at me and be like, dude, what are you talking about? But I remember when he came to me and first started working with me, and he was just a joy. I mean, 6 years, man, it's like working with your best friend. It was such a treat, and I'm so glad we're still good friends. It was interesting to watch him, because and I don't have this, I'll be transparent. He had an exercise science degree. He had fancy words to use all day long, and I had 30 years of human degree. I mean, I had 30 years of coaching humans, again, motorcycles to drums to whatever. And it was interesting to watch him struggle trying to bridge those two gaps. The technical gap to the lay human who's like mom, dad, lawyer, whatever, who's coming to do fitnessy stuff. And all too often I would see a trap of getting too bogged down in that when they're just like I just want to pick this up. Like, I don't need to know about like hinge and hamstring and glute, it's like, I just want to pick this up. So I think it becomes a very selective.
So me. That's so me, by the way. I just tell me what, pick it up, move it over there. Yeah. Feel it where, all right, let's move on to the next thing.
And I think it's important, and that I'm glad you said that, because I don't think it's age dependent. I think it's really, I have a client of mine that, level like class, you're a great example. Like you came and asked questions, which were like, I mean, it made my eyes kind of get big because it's like, fuck, these are huge questions. Like, I love it though. I love it because you came to me saying, hey, I'm thinking about this. And it's like, oh, fuck, let's talk. Like, I love that. But I feel like I've learned enough not to presume that everybody wants to go down those rabbit holes. And I think you can have the detriment of losing people and actually losing buy-in because you're trying to make something either more overcomplicated or you're just trying to get too heady, maybe not purposefully, in your vernacular or word choices. I've always been a big fan and very particular about the vocabulary that I use. Because I think all those things matter. And I think that's what I think I bring to the table that maybe some people don't have, is that's where my history and my age helps, because I think I can do that really well to the person that's in front of me. So if I were working with, let's just say you two, I feel like I would know not to talk, wait, I don't know, you're over here for me. There you go. Not to talk technically to you, and we'll just talk big macro, use, maybe we'll relate it to certain things, where for Cass, it's like rabbit hole guy, like, fuck, great, let's go down the rabbit holes. Because that's going to make you feel fulfilled and feel valued and feel that the exchange is exactly what you need it to be. Man, I talk a lot. I'll stop.
But for the record, that's exactly why I was so I was like watching Taylor. I'm like, I want to talk to Taylor more. It was fun to have both of you there because I needed both of that. Like now, part of the funny thing was like I can watch myself on video and like teach myself, and it's like, well, isn't good job, Michael. Like I find myself doing that all the time. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh shit, good job, Michael. Thanks, Michael. So here, let me plug you a little bit and talk a little bit about like what I mean by that. So, and then you can defend yourself. So when I watch people like learn how to do a pull-up, for example, okay, it's like get bands and then with 2 legs and then 1 leg and then, okay, now try it without that. And that's a way. And I think the thing that, John was talking about eccentrics, because I had before I was training with you at Sam Topping, had that HIT program, and it was just such a big thing for me. And I was very attracted to the fact that I saw a lot of that tempo programming in your stuff. By the way, how you write your programming is how I teach people if they want to know, right? So if I'm talking to them about tempos, I'm going to write a program exactly like you would write a program. But I also don't think that it's not like you invented that. So maybe, but like, yeah, I think there's so much to be said about, wherever you are, because we have a lot of people in San Diego, obviously, but Michael is a trainer who is going to make sure that you earn your ability to do a movement, right? So if you're learning how to do a pull-up, there's a way safer way to do a pull-up than some of the ways that people try to learn how to do a pull-up. And it's not that you can't get away with these, but it's just like when you take that a little bit more safe, slow, conservative route, like in 2 years, it's such a game changer. And so that kind of coaching is what should be like completely present in the 12 to 18-year-old range. And for whatever it's worth, like this has nothing to do with Michael. Like Michael has found his what do you call it, psychographic, and I just it's weird that there aren't more people like that, right? Because I've talked highly of Discover Strength out in Chanhassen and Plymouth or wherever they are, just because, man, if you're going to pick something that's safe, like, goodness, that's such a good approach. Like, I'm not here to sit and dig into, is it the best or not? It's just that idea is I like introducing young athletes or just new, people to fitness in a way like that. So anyway, you want to dive into
I want to riff on that for a
approach?
minute. Yeah.
And maybe like you haven't talked about your coach either. I haven't really asked you a lot about your coach or that either. So,
just trying to hit all the points. I think the age thing is let's make sure we come back to that when we're talking about sort of youth versus, and we could even dive into like, well, what's a youth? Like, is that 15, is 15 and up not a youth? Like all that whole question, should young people lift weights? But I do agree with you. Yes, I regardless of whether I was a CrossFit gym or not, regardless of my path, you earn what you earn.
Don't be so embarrassed about that. I love CrossFit.
I know, and I don't. I'm not. Yeah. Whoops. With myself.
Yeah, we know. Yes. Like.
Right.
It's not that big a deal to us. Like we understand what it is. Like cast CrossFit. Like we can just call it working out. Like it doesn't. The word.
Great.
Whatever. Competitive. It's a competitive workout.
Yes. So, I think due to part of it being my age, coming to coaching and fitness coaching later, probably early 30s, so it's been probably about a 15, 18-year journey for me now, and not having maybe sort of youthful insanity fitness experiences as a background. I never really did much. I mean, I played drums and did taekwondo when I was a kid. I played sports, but I never played sports competitively. I just played them all. I threw shit and caught shit and ran around. And but for me, when like I've always been into the human side of the coaching piece. Like that's actually when I'm the most fulfilled. Like I love sets and reps and snatch and clean and jerk all day long. I love that stuff. But like who's actually human that's actually doing it? Like I wanna get inside of that person and their mindset around it and really build a relationship. And I think it goes back to what we first talked about, which was, as I mentioned, around fitness being like this, it's such an overly used word, but the journey of fitness, movement, life, like people who want to think that they are going to earn a pull-up or want to get thrown into the pull-up game, to use your point, Cass, and get thrown on a band. The problem there, it's not the client because they don't know any better. The problem is, unfortunately, the person that's putting the band around that person's foot and saying, okay, now you can slap around and do 10 shitty ass banded pull-ups because I've put this within the context of a training session, and I haven't asked some really deep, dark questions of myself of why the hell am I asking this group of people in front of me to do a number of a movement when reality is 90% of them can't. So I'm not going to ask that question. I'm just going to find ways to facilitate this group to do what I said that I want them to do. And I've never, like, I just kept, and this, I thank my largest fitness mentor, which is James Fitzgerald, who's part of OPEX Fitness, who I've just had years and years of wonderful mentorship from. I early on just kept asking more and more questions of me, like, what does fitness mean to me? What kind of experience do I want to offer? What kind of people do I want to work with? How do I perceive fitness as in the realm of the world and life and all these deep, dark questions? And ultimately then, because I have always been amazed at with blind trust, what men and women will come through my door and allow me to have them do. It's amazing without asking any questions. Like, sure, I'll do that. Yep. So if they don't know any better, like, I fucking better know better.
Yeah.
So I'm not gonna blame the coach that puts a band around somebody's foot unless they know a little better and they're not, it's like if you know what you don't know, man, I'm all okay, great. Then continue to learn. Great. And let's talk about why I feel like philosophically that's not gonna work for me. If you know what you don't know, like, ooh, and you're still putting the band around the guy's foot or the woman's foot, like, now you've got a problem. Now you're a sham. Now you're putting people at risk. Now you're just going for the dollar, and I've got a problem.
Well, I do think I will stick up for some of them for the record, because I do think that there's something to be said about there is some weird standards in who is the authority in our world, and like what is right and what is wrong. So I know that there's some people that will stand up pretty hard for some of the methods that they follow. And there's a lot of people, going in those directions. You see it with, some hitting coaches that will do some weird things that gain, you see their followers. It's like hundreds of thousands of people are following these people. And it's just bad. It looks good, and there's a good pitch behind it, but that's just everywhere. So I don't know. Like, no, that's not a good example. I was going to say Bikram yoga, but that's bad for a different reason.
Well, let me bring up two things. So let's come back to the pull-up piece. First of all, I'll be the first to look at a human being and tell them that they're never going to get a pull-up, which is fine. Who cares? Bodyweight pull-up is an immensely complex movement that there's so many body weight to power realities that never might be a reality for somebody, but it doesn't mean that we can't pull vertically, right? I mean, let's talk about what we're actually trying to accomplish. We're trying to balance and build a system of pulling and pushing. So we have a range of motion question to ask. We have a sort of reality of baseline where they are, and then just an analysis and reality of like, what is this person's potential right now? Maybe they're just physically too heavy, and the physicality of actually pulling their body up without some huge assistance. And again, are we talking strict, or are we talking more of the kipping-ish kind of scenario? Two other huge different issues to talk about. If I can talk about you for a second, remember when you came to me, Cass, around weightlifting, and we did an analysis and we looked at ankle mobility and upper back mobility and all these things. And there was a part, I think, honestly, I was with you, and I'm like, I don't know about this journey, but it's going to be a journey. Like, I was really transparent with you. Like, we're going to be smart and be very stepped and do the things that you can do and push the envelope a little bit right to that gray zone a little bit. And let's see how the body reacts. And for you, you're sort of like a success story that I think about when I look at the progression that you were willing to make with the time and patience that you were willing to put into it. And that's the key, is you weren't like, no, I want to snatch and clean and jerk full lifts from the floor like tomorrow. And I'm like, yeah, we're not doing that. And you're like, okay, well, let's just do what we can do. Okay, let's do that. And we did that for what, 2 years? I mean, what you were able to do.
Yeah. And I don't know if you've seen me, but like, dude, I did a clean and jerk the other day in just normal shoes. And you just laid a foundation for me to understand, like, okay, these are some simple ways to think about it. I understand movement enough to, I don't know, it's crazy. And my snatch, like I could barely snatch. Like I could definitely not like overhead squat. And I mean, how many of us should really be spending a ton of time overhead squatting is probably a pretty good debate. But I can
No,
do
it's
it.
not.
And
It's not. It's an easy debate. It's not many.
that's what I mean. That's what I mean. Yeah.
But to your point, you had, and this is where I think we have to, the coach-client relationship is, I knew what's required to do the lifts, the full versions of lift. When I say snatch, I don't mean squat snatch. That's redundant. Snatch, full range of motion, snatch, full range of motion, clean. I knew what you were capable of through an assessment and through and I know what was required to do them well, but it doesn't mean you couldn't do parts or pieces of them, and we couldn't work in auxiliary elements over the course of time to see how the body could react. And you were like, as the client, were like, yeah, I'll buy into that. How many people will say like, oh wow, 18th month journey to do this thing that I say I want to do today? That's not a lot of people are going to say that, which is fine, because then I'm going to say, well, that's what it's going to take. So we're not doing that then. I'm sorry. Like, I'm not going to, well, I say 18 months, but if you do this 6-month package with me, well, then it's like, no. Like, then we're not going to snatch and clean and jerk. That's okay.
Yeah.
And then if I lose that client, I lose the client. But
yeah, and so I was four times a week with Michael, and it's the same thing that we talk about in our world of how you just have to keep throwing. And something as much as like the front rack. Okay. And it's ironic because I haven't been on this. So the front rack is something a lot of baseball players are being asked to front squat. Okay. And instead of like learning how to front rack, they're just not front racking. So they have different variations and
they're doing
pulls,
that.
and that's fine, but you don't need to do that when you're 14. When you're 14, you can take the time to learn how to front rack correctly. And so I would literally just stand here with the freaking bar in my hand, and I would take opportunities, maybe on an off day. I'm like, I still want to work out, and I'm just going to lunge in a front rack, and I would just I just hated being bad at that part. And so like to have somebody that's there to slow you down, and that's exactly what I need, right? Like I want to go now, right? And so like, I was lucky to run into somebody like that. And I'm hearing myself out loud because that's obviously why I like CrossFit, but that's also why I needed that background of you to know how to identify when to slow myself down and stuff like that.
Nice.
So always what would Michael do comes into play when it's like, dude, sit down, stop. It'll be okay if you don't keep going. Okay.
It's funny that you say that too, though, because it makes me think about skill acquisition, like on anything, and
that's what you should talk about, by the way.
The Cass and I have from the beginning identified that we are equally as psycho, and
awesome.
To our standard that the people we surround ourselves with have to show this level of psychopath dedication at some form, whatever their life's journey is going. So we understand that you're actually serious about it. And that's going back to the application process of what we were talking about earlier about 108 and how we're selective. Like we've turned people away all the time and just told them, hey, I don't think this is for you. You want us to do this thing and it's not even in our method and our system. And I'm sorry, that's just not the way we want to do it. We just don't want to do it that way. The lack of understanding of like why we're not willing to take the money for it and how we're not able to just cater to the customer and stuff. It's like, it's just not about that. That's not what, if you understand what we are and what we do and the culture that we provide and what we are trying to put in front of you, that easily
if you don't
should
want
be what
that,
you focused on. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and if you don't want it,
like,
hey, no big deal. Like we're not mad at you. And we got people that go to all kinds of other coaches and they have a ton of coaches and that's fine, right? And it's funny when we get the kids that have been with us for a long time and then they're like returning the information to us, we're like repackaging it and sending it back to them so they can understand what the guy's actually saying so we can actually all work together. But to this day, there's only been like one or two other coaches that have actually called us and they're like, what are you doing? Like, can we just talk about it? And because it's just such a weird thing where there's a stigma where you don't want to cross the lines. And to Cass's credit, he's done a really good job of like integrating us into the market here and just like meeting people and talking to people. And we had a couple big time university coaches on here that were like, yeah, we watch your stuff online. It's fun. It's awesome.
Nice.
We love what you're doing. And, it obviously it feels nice to be, that the people that you're trying to impress on a macro scale, that it works. But in the same sense, it's just a very unique process for people to go through and understand of like what buying in is. And it sounds like, with the length of time that you've been running your business and how you're able to focus and not focus and look at it is that it's unique 10 years ago, but we're seeing just a lot more. I don't know what freeform coaching. I don't even know what it's called, but I call it floating. Like I just float around and just when we get the gym going, I'm just walking around just like you're saying, and I'm going like, how's it feel? What's going on? How you doing? Did you like that? And so I'm definitely with you on that one because it's very. I don't want to get in kids' way, because to your point, like Cass and I are so different on how we're coached. Like I just want to do it. And then look at the data later or interpret how I'm doing and try to just get as many reps because I guess I just understand like how much time how hard it is to stay inside the flow state. And once you're there, right? Once you're at the peak flow state where you figure it out, I just want to stay there as long as I can. So I remember it because it's going to drop off. Right. And so, it's funny because he challenges me every day on things. I constantly send him, he'll wake up, I'm sure, to like 4 or 5 different Instagram posts that I'm just sending something to him. And I just want to see what his brain does. Like it's a fun ping pong of ideas that we do all the time. And it's very fun.
I do love when you said about, you don't want to get in the way. And I think that's it, as coaches, it's so easy. And I always would think about this in the music context, because I was teaching, young musicians and college kids, and I was at a pretty high level music school, music college in Minnesota. And, it's maybe a little, I don't know if this parallels as much, but I mean, music, like with many, arts of sort, I mean, it's an evolving art. It's a moving target. It's not a static. I mean, anytime we go back and have identified an era, classical music, whatever, these names that we put on things is, we're after the moment and we're looking back and we can kind of bundle it up into a thing. Well, here I am, a 40-some-year-old or whatever dude that's like sitting in front of a 20-year-old kid. And, like my experiences are valuable to him, but my experiences aren't his experiences. And my awareness and how I hear music and how I process it, while I can say I've done it well enough to be successful financially, while I feel like I've done it well to understand the technical pieces of it and I can communicate and teach it, I want music to keep moving forward. So I don't want I want to be careful with how, because think of an educational system obviously as having, it's got to have some boundaries. It's got to have some boxes, and we're trying to fit people into little boxes. I have to be really careful that I'm not extinguishing some magic by trying to fit somebody into a box. And yes, okay, how this parallels to snatch and clean and jerk, it's not quite the same, but yet it is. I mean, snatch and clean and jerk is not an evolving, moving target. It is from a loading standpoint. I mean, the lifts are the lifts. I always come back to those things because those are my favorite things in the whole wide world. But I think when it just comes to the person, I think that's more of the piece that I'm trying to connect back to. It's so important that we, like you said, don't get in the way. Like, how can I assist? How can I push along? And maybe, look, I love when you first said, like, hey, how'd that feel? That was the first thing out of your mouth when you're talking. Man, I joke with every new client that comes to my door and says, you are going to get so tired of hearing the term, hey, how'd that feel? Hey, what'd you think about that? Hey, how? Because it's a question, it's a dialogue. It's not, hey, that third rep wasn't a good rep. Oh no, that's bad, wrong. No, move your knee. It's not just a coaching cue. It's I'm going to draw you into this. I want you to be a part of this. I love that. I love those words, man. Words matter. Words matter. That's true.
It's
no, go ahead.
I was going to say something about kids. I don't know. The words are. I'm very much a wordsmith. Like that was the whole communication degree thing. I found myself like a year ago. I was sitting on the beach. I'm like, I want to read my Western rhetorical book that I have in my bag. Like, what am I doing? Like the philosophy of words and the philosophy of rhetoric. So I think it's super important because, and we do it all the time. John is constantly, he talked about the coach player thing. Like, I'm just John. This is just Cass, but I've explained to parents too. I think it's been helpful for us to, and this is just me needing to name stuff. John was just doing it, but he's a little more natural on that. But like, I feel more like an older brother, right? And when I look at things from that standpoint, from a younger player, that can be a completely different game, right? If I'm looking at them like that judging father figure all the time, right? A lot of kids will never get out of their shell when they do that. So we're constantly playing back and forth with like, how do we need this to be? We've done, gosh, you'd really like this stuff. By the way, if you're ever itching to get out here, there are so many places for you to come to. So there's a place out here called S10 Fitness we started this relationship right before all this quarantine happened. So I haven't been able to like dig into them as much as I want to, but they introduced me to Z Health. Have you heard of this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we are doing like, I have it right here. We have this little chart. Okay. And so it's like music. So literally you just have 3 different patterns that you associate with each thing. Have you seen these charts?
I haven't. I don't know if I have. I might have to share that with me.
Okay, yeah. So Chris Daly down at S10, he does like their whole thing is that their assessments are like neurological assessments. So they don't have physical assessments. They have visions tests and then balance tests. And that's like how they introduce them to fitness. And so then from a performance standpoint, this has been like candy for kids, because when we have kids coming in, you talk about like, it's just such a different complex, right? Where you have an adult that's going to be like super self-conscious or what have you. Like a kid is going to be like, I'm in a new place right now. Oh my gosh. Oh, you know what I mean? Like it's just a different level of thing. So this kind of thing, this game, or any way that we can gamify for our kids, right? But this is like gamify your brain, calm down. And so we'll play this for maybe 3 minutes, and all of a sudden, so I'll have a kid that's coming in and you'll ask him a question. You talked about like this, this relationship going back and forth, and we have to get to the point with our kids where like, hey, how'd that feel? John's like, you can answer me. Like nothing happens, right?
Yeah.
But
like
I'll sit
down in the middle of the gym, especially like a 9 or 10-year-old. Like I'll just sit down Indian style. I'm like, I'll just wait you out. I can do this all day.
And I'm like, John, there's a better way. Let's use this. We don't need you sitting down in the middle of the floor, stopping for 30 minutes.
Sometimes you got to be dramatic,
Yeah. But these are the fun things that I'm learning about, and like, okay, how can we get them in the right mindset? These are how can we be there for the kids in that way? So it's been a lot of fun recently, because this stuff. And then Michael, this is the stuff that then I take the parents through it, and I'm like, oh no, this is the conversation I really need to be having right now. Is like, do you realize so the kids will just play it. Right? The kids will just like go through this stuff, and like, especially some of the sensory stuff that we'll do. So like, if you have a kid that's like, gets really nervous when you like give them criticism, you say, hey, next time your heart rate goes up, just start like tapping your fingers. So kids are usually really open to it because they're desperate for solutions. And parents are just like, they have no tolerance for solutions, right? And so I have had people like, hey, do you want to come play this game? I am not playing this game right now. Like, oh, my bad. Like, sorry, I was
something else going on there.
And right, and then so that's probably a dynamic that you definitely don't have besides like 3 people of like parent kid relationships. But again, it's humans, right? And this is the life that we live, and we choose this for a reason, because I like the challenge.
How do you? I have a question for you guys. Like, I don't have to deal with this at all, but I've seen it. The hockey parent. It's like, How do you guys work? When the student is one way, and the parent is like the helicopter parent, the parent where you're like, dude, you need to just shut up and like go in another room or whatever, or like this poor kid doesn't even want to play this sport. Like, why if he shouldn't even be here or she shouldn't be here? Like, how do you negotiate that?
Well, it's a conversation to make sure that the parent and the athlete and us understand we're all on the same team, right? But guess what? Nobody can throw the ball but the athlete, right? So we can't. You can even do this with coaches. It used to bother me when I would play. my coach would get so mad when we were playing, and I'd be like, dude, you're not even playing the game. I don't understand why you're so upset. I'm 10 times more upset than you are because I'm playing the game. You're on the sidelines, you know? And so once we can establish that to make sure they understand that, like, you're actually hindering your kid's progress by over analyzing your sessions on the way home, you know, and like, it's about changing the narrative about the way the parent is communicating with the kid. We're like, hey, you need to be the fan of your son. You need to be his fan. You need to be his number one fan, and make sure that you guys are cool. And you're talking about, like, my dad did a great job when I was in Little League, and I had no idea what he was doing this, but he figured out very young that I was a very incentive-based competitive athlete, right? So if I struck out more than 6 guys in our Little League game, we got Whataburger. If I struck out 8, I got a double-double. You best believe I came out the gate 10 punchies every game, and I was so jealous. Everybody's like,
double, baby.
Yeah,
double.
Man, they were going, you know, I remember my teammates were like, hey, they're going like, hey, you know, after the game you get like a soda or a Gatorade and like an orange or something, you know, and I'm like, nope, not wasting any of that space. This is going to be a good meal.
So since in the last, like, I'd say, I don't know, I just feel like since I've been there, I've been slowly trying to answer that question, to be honest with you. And so one of the things that I've been trying to do is, it's all about right away when we meet people, I'm like, listen, I have no idea who you are. So this is my opportunity to say, you know, this is kind of our expectation. Everything that we do here is intentional. And we do things differently, you know, and we're very, very involved in this. And that means I'm going to have interesting conversations with your kid. And if they're having a bad day, you know, I'm going to try to figure out why they're having a bad day.
Nice.
And sometimes that's going to be because, you know, you're ticked off at each other, and I'm going to have to be in that conversation and at least know how to handle that, you know? And so I'm just saying that up in front, you know. And then as far as like, you know, because this is actually, I've evolved from this. I saw so many issues with this in the past where I was, you know, at one point I was like, you know, it'd be easier if we just like have a parent viewing away from this where it's, you know, just physically out of the situation. And we have a relationship with a guy named Kyle Wagner out on the East Coast, just a really good dude. And he pushes hard for the parent coach relationship to be a really good involved one, because it's like, dude, what are you asking of those parents? Like, you should return the favor by getting them as involved as possible. And I really have taken that to heart and been like, listen, you know, I want to be able to have real hard conversations with everybody right now. And if I'm being a jerk, I want you all to tell me, and I mean it, you know, and I have to have that to the kids. You know, I've had a couple of kids just be like, no, I don't want to do this. And even though it happens 2 or 3 times, the fact that I had said that and they had the courage to say it, like, that's all that matters. And I know that they're not going to most of the time, but that's what you're fighting for. Because when you have that level of trust, now if their arm hurts, they're going to tell you. If they're having a terrible day, they're going to tell you. And I don't know, it's just a decision, right? It's a decision to decide to have an impact on the people a certain way. And I've just started day one and said, these are our intentions, and we're going to screw up and you're going to screw up, and let's just make sure we're always communicating.
Well, I love that, because I mean, it's a much more, again, overused term, holistic approach to your coaching, you know, experience and expectations. I mean, it's a two-way street, and it requires you though to have more skill sets, you know, and that parallels my world all the time.
Yeah.
You know, I think, you know, I laugh because I think clients, you know, after a while start to understand. I mean, you can't come into my gym without one of us basically, you know, hey, how's it going today? You know, how's your day? You know, how's work? You know, these little kind of offset questions, which just might sound like just casual banter, but really what I want to find out is that you had a horrible presentation at work today. You slept like shit last night, and today's programming might actually be asking you to do some really heavy back squats. So the fact that I know that you're burned and you're on fumes, and I've just casually kind of determined, you know, and you've shared that, and we brought this into our expectations of, like, we talk about these things, like, these are common I want to learn and know more than just snatching, you know, heavy weights and reps and sets and tempo. And it's like, then I'm going to coach you differently that day. Like I'm going to probably hold you back from yourself and help you understand that it's okay that the back squat isn't, it's 5 pounds lighter or 10 pounds lighter today, because it doesn't fucking matter. It doesn't matter. You know, unlike maybe some of the guys you work with, even at the highest level, I've never worked with a single human being in my gym that's making money doing what they're doing, right? This is all for love or for health and fitness, you know, and for most of my clients, it's for long-term health and fitness. So that even filters it further of like going back to your conversation in my cast about, you know, snatch and clean and jerk. Like I'm not going to take somebody through movements that aren't going to have purpose and value. I don't mind a little bit of gray zone if it's still healthy. It comes back to my personal philosophy. Like I don't mind, stuff has to be fun. Like I'm not, let me be clear, I'm not the fun guy. You know, I'm not just body weight only. No, you shouldn't heavy deadlift. No, you should heavy deadlift. But do you have to do double body weight heavy deadlifts? No. Do you want to because you like to? Fuck, let's do it. Great. Do you need, as a grown ass man, like a body weight and a half deadlift for reps to just be reasonably strong to function in this world? I'm going to put my hand up and say, yes, please. You know, do you have to heavy back squat? No, but I need you to back squat something. I'll give you a kettlebell. I don't care. Why? Because you're going to need that in life. Does it need to be a double body weight back squat? No, I don't care. You know, that just, now it gets into what you enjoy. But I have a foundation of what I think humans will be more resilient and happy to have, especially in their older ages. So I don't know where that came from, but yeah. All right,
no, it's really hard in our world for people to play the long game.
Yeah.
You know, and it's so different out here. You know, you talk about the hockey parent, and that's the baseball parents out here. You know, the one thing I do see is I will say I will stick up for our kids. I don't really run into out here where kids aren't into baseball. Like our kids love coming to our place, and I think part of it is that we have a pretty cool setup, and it's easy to have fun at our place. But you know, I did train a lot more kids in Minnesota that just really weren't there for the right reasons, and that was unfortunate. You know, and everybody knows it, and you just keep on doing it because I don't know, because you like people, you know, and that's really what it was. Is these were still good kids, you know, and there was still a way to have an impact on them. But I'm glad to not be running into that as much. So,
what's your guys'? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, nothing. Go ahead.
What's your guys' philosophy sort of on the, of course it's evolving and, you know, depends is the answer for everything in our world, but sort of the one sport athlete versus, I mean, you know, do you run into that a lot? Is that commonplace? Do you invite that? Do you try to get people away from that? Is it age dependent, skill dependent?
I guess I'll go first. I think Cass and I view this similarly and different at the same time, because I resonate with two different schools of thought, right? Like I'm just float in between. Like you said, it depends, right? I was obsessed with baseball. If the entire what we're setting up is based on what I wish we had, what's on the technology that's available. So I'm trying to make the coolest, most fun environment for a pitcher to show up every day if that's all they want to do every day, because that's all I ever wanted to do. I'd go play football, boring. Soccer, that's kind of fun, right? But also don't get the ball a lot, boring, you know? And so tried basketball. Basketball was great, got dunked on at 10, quit that real quick, you know? And baseball just seemed to be like, well, you always have control. If you're the pitcher of the ball and it's just there, right? And so throwing was always the most fun. And so like through football with my dad, through baseball, did all that. And so, you know, I've come to the realization that what people really want for a pitcher is them to be like this elite athlete, combined with a pitcher who's skilled like a dart thrower that can just be disgusting at making the ball spin, do all this stuff, right? And for some reason in society, we think that playing basketball will make you a great pitcher. And I understand the athleticism correlation, but the skill, right, and the building of the thing, it just takes way too long to be the elite level pitcher that you need to be, or thrower, right? Yeah. And I understand that there's also situations where maybe your brain needs a break and you probably should go play basketball, right? So I played 6 years professionally in Mexico, and I visited some other countries that play baseball and approach sports differently in the international market, and they don't do multiple sports. They're just not a thing. You pick one, and then the other sports are actually conditioning, and I find that the impressive part, right? Where like in the Dominican Republic, they play soccer and basketball for conditioning for baseball. That's what they do.
Nice.
Right. So it's
Nice.
like, it's not like they're not free playing. It's just not an organized competitive thing. That's not the purpose of it. Right. And so that's the way I look at it, is like, if I'm going to build a kid and an athlete, like I'll throw him in gymnastics. He's going to play soccer. He's going to play basketball, all do that stuff, but we're going to throw and hit all the time. That's just what's going to happen, because that's what I want to do anyway. I'm going to make him throw to me. I'm going to try to strike him out. It's just going to be fun, you know?
Speaking of helicopter parent, your
future. But no,
Well,
but I think there's a difference of what I think I'm going to try to accomplish. And if it doesn't work, like I said, Kat, I will easily defer, right? Because like, you need someone to throw you VP.
And I think you hit on a couple of great points. I mean, you know, the Dominican piece where it's like there's still, you know, called GPP, whatever. There's still just play that's happening. You know, I mean, I see it sometimes. I've seen it in a fitness standpoint go really wrong, where weightlifting is actually a reasonably medium-sized sport. Although, you know, in my city or in my state, there's a number of high school programs that have like weightlifting programs. I mean, snatch and clean and jerk programs in high schools. I mean, there's coaches and, you know, this army of kids in these weight rooms. I've never actually seen a weight room because it's just, I think I would die a million times over. But what I've seen is I've seen a couple of these kids come to me for some specialty training, because obviously in a large group setting, snatch and clean and jerk, like, wow, yikes. But what I've noticed where it can go wrong in my world sometimes is, I mean, those are very specific movements. And, you know, when I saw two young girls in particular that came and trained with me, and like they went from like zero, like I don't have any sport experience. I didn't go out and play. I didn't do anything, to heavy snatch, clean and jerk, back squat, front squat. Like that's it. Like I go from 0 to 1,000 degrees in no times flat. And they come to me with like, and their movement patterns and their body dynamics. And it's like, oh my gosh, like you are just a broken human being and you're 14. Like, for God's sake, you know. But I think you nailed it when you talked about elite level. Like, hey, I'm not looking at a 14-year-old kid that's going to the game, like, you know, that's on a competitive path, who would have had to have had multiple exposures to multiple things to have the physicality ready to excel. I'm talking about the casual kid who is in these, you know, average gyms, who's 14, 15, 16 with one coach and 40 kids throwing barbells around. It's just like, oh Lord, like I can't do that. That hurts my head a little bit.
I want to throw my hat in the
Put your hat in.
multi-sport thing. So I think in Minnesota, it's just so different, right? So you have to think about this like regionally, because these opportunities just are not, it's different conversations depending on where you are.
Good
right.
point.
And so like, you know, the same thing with the Dominicans, right? Like, it's not like, oh, I'm a 4-sport athlete. Where are you from? Dominican Republic. What? Like, that doesn't even exist. Right. And so, so some of that is going to be just, where are you? Right. And so when I'm from the middle of nowhere, I don't even have the option to keep playing baseball. It's really hard for me to maintain that skill when I'm the only person in the county that wants to do that. You know, and I could have tried harder, but I just didn't have the influence on me, right? So to John's point, I think both of us are coming from hey, we want to be that thing that both of us would have wanted, right? Because I feel the same exact way. So part of that is like, I've always loved baseball. Like, it's like baseball, fishing, and music, and it's like, that's about it. Like, that will be there forever. And but simultaneously, like, I just know that there are some things that, like hockey, for example, like I know that hockey players are almost always good multi-sport athletes. And but I also think that I say that because there aren't like hockey players that kind of play hockey.
Right.
There isn't a kind of in that sport where people casually play baseball all across the country. And so to that person, like, we're just not having a conversation about that person, I think. Right. So the rec league people that want to just like casually do it, I almost think that, I don't know what's going to happen to that, because it's almost like it's not cool anymore. Right. Because from my standpoint personally, and maybe this is the problem, right? Maybe this is because too many adults are creating the narrative and not enough kids we're not asking their opinion, but like, there's so much value in getting really good at something.
Yeah.
right? And so if you're 12 years old and you're awesome at piano, there's a really good chance you're going to blueprint that and project that onto something else. Not necessarily. I want to say somebody like, anyway, somebody just said like that isn't always the case, but regardless, like often that can be, and that's how I know when I got really good at baseball, like as I'm getting this mindset going from a coaching standpoint, that's why I'm gravitating towards my trumpet. That's why I'm picking these things up. That's why I'm doing different skills because, that's going to help me everywhere. So.
Right. I think it's such an overused term again, the journey part of, I mean, if you're an exceptional musician or whatever, instrument, whatever, I mean, while the modalities are obviously different, I mean, the mindset piece, I don't care who you are, these are universal principles of time and investment and analysis and, usually a connection to some sort of master that you're working with and exchanging and learning and having frustrations and failure and getting that feedback. I mean, whether it's a trumpet or a baseball or a barbell, I mean, these are all, so I agree with you. I think,
because kids don't draw the abstraction, right? Like that's what they're not good at. Adults are good at drawing the abstraction,
yeah,
right? So it's the same thing where like I took multiple. So I have a degree in communication studies from a liberal arts college in St. Paul, Minnesota, and I took outside of that almost all generals, and I took 2 psychology classes. But I know for a fact these are one of the I've literally never said this in my life. If I could redo it, I would double major, no doubt in my mind. Because nobody just told me like you do it because it's hard. Who cares? But because when you can have those 2 strengths back to back, you can now go like, oh, I get it. Anthropology is like about, how we got here and like, okay, I get it. Like you can abstract those things onto it when you need to. Right. And so like having all of these things, you can't even use them at that age. Right. And so that would be my biggest argument is like, it's awesome that I got to wrestle and dive and be in band and choir and all of these things. But gosh, I really wish I wouldn't have been in Spanish club and spent all of that time because it didn't end up working out and I really didn't care. I actually probably didn't care that much about one of choir or band. I could have done one way better.
Right.
If somebody would have been there helping me like be a little more economic about the things that I needed to be doing. I mean, I'm just such an anomaly. I was freaking in everything. I worked at 12. Like but I know that everybody's experience is going to be similar to this. Kids need help in like, hey, just like adults need help in, hey, what are you spending your time on? Right? When you're having a conversation about their nutrition or their training, like you're going to have to metaphorically cut some of the fat away, right? You have to make better decisions. So that's where I think the multi-sport athlete thing is a bad argument because it's just, what are we talking about? What are we talking about right now?
Well, and I think now and both of you and myself included now, I think we have to define who we're referring to because you either have, I mean, I think about my band, when I taught band, I had 102 kids in front of me. Think about that, 102 kids with weapons in their hands, right? And I'm supposed to like make sense. It was awesome though. I loved those kids. Oh my God, those were wonderful days. But, like of those 102 kids, probably 102 of them, maybe 100, let's say, it's a casual, it's an experience for them. It's part of a journey of just being a young human being, and they're just sort of dabbling toes. But there's 2 kids out of that 100 that have that spark, have that something special. I mean, like for drums, like I was that kid, So I think in what we're maybe talking about is we have to make sure that we have systems in place, whether it's systems in sports, systems in fitness, that can identify and facilitate the opportunities to dissect and delineate the masses from those geniuses, just like we do in all the disciplines, so that those kids can have a path and can go and be the fucking best Michael Jordans or whoever of the world, or the world, the world record Olympian. I'm doing this with my stanchion cleaning jig, but you can't see my arms. So I tend to talk a lot with my arms, as you figured out by now. But I think that's a piece. One of my biggest weightlifting mentor, Brian Derwin, who's just a genius. He was on the 1980 Olympic weightlifting team, and he was my first kind of mentor in weightlifting and fitness in town. He's such a sweet man, and he was the president of the USA weightlifting organization back in the late 80s, and he always talked about we're trying to find the geniuses. That we're not, this is not a participation sport. This is a sport to delineate the best of the best of the best, and they didn't have systems in place to do that. The nice thing is you now see they have changed that, and Americans are doing a little better. Americans are starting to come up and be a little more nationally competitive and globally competitive because the culture has shifted a little bit to better facilitate and identify those people. It's interesting.
I don't know if you've seen this, but we are housed in the same place as East County Barbell, and yeah, he's really good. And I've said this, like, how critical I am. And Wes Cravey and East County Barbell, they have a really, really good club. So I'm following. I know you're not. It's funny that I'm gonna call you out. It's funny that I asked you for social media advice at one point. You're wearing a lot of hats. I'm not going to give you too much shit, but that would be a really good follow. Is East County Barbell? He's doing some good stuff and is a fantastic human being. So it's really cool to see that. So right next to where we're throwing is a bunch of people throwing things over their heads. So
fun. Holy cow! Have you actually been talking for 75 minutes and 40 seconds?
Yeah, I was just about to say. I think we've probably reached the end of this right here. I mean, that's Michael, awesome. It's been a pleasure. I really appreciate it. We got to do this again. We got to get some more people on here. We can get up to like 6 people on this platform. So your information and insight was very, very useful there. I know that a lot of our community and our parents over here in San Diego will appreciate a lot of the things that you have mentioned on here. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Real quick for me, can you just tell everybody where you're at? If anybody has any questions and would like to reach out, just anything you want to plug real quick, and then we'll sign off.
Yeah, I mean, well, in the day of COVID, my closed business is mspfitness.com, as you would spell it, mspfitness.com. And it is kind of cute. The MSP part of the MSP Fitness does happen to correspond to the airport code of Minnesota, but it also happens to be my initials. So it's kind of a fun little play on play.
I'm glad you said that.
It's always funny when most people are like, they'd like to just learn it, and they're like, that's so cool. But yeah, mspfitness.com. Easiest thing would be to just check out my website. You can contact me through there. I do, I think my specialty either in the Olympic weightlifting realm or more specifically sort of one-on-one individualized coaching, not personal training. And in this day and age, I'll be honest with you, I mean, it's remote coaching, and I've been doing that for a decade. So that can be on any level depending on a person's ability. So if somebody's out there looking to get some good one-on-one coaching and they're struggling, either that they don't have access to a gym or whatnot, like, be great to, I'm not going to be I'll be selfless for a minute. Reach out to me.
So definitely. msp.fitness for Instagram, isn't it? At msp.fitness.
Yep.
I think there's a period.
Yeah, yes, I just looked it up. Period. MSP Fitness Studio on Instagram. Is that what it is?
No.
Nope. MSP. What the heck? I should know.
It's okay. God. We'll get it.
Well, I follow him. I follow him on my personal page and CK Soda Baseball page. So, and I posted him all over my social media today. So if you are on Instagram, check him out today. If not, you can always go to his website and just ask him. So
Michael at MSP Fitness gets you my email.
Hey man, it's so good to see you. I'm so glad we got to do this.
Thank you.
Man, you're the
best. It was really nice to meet you for sure.
Love it, gentlemen. Really a pleasure. Thanks so much.
Definitely. Well, guys, don't forget to go follow Michael. If you got any questions, hit up his remote training, and don't forget to subscribe, like, hit the comments. If you crush the like button, it helps us huge in the YouTube algorithm. So thank you very much. And if you guys have any other questions, don't hesitate to ask. So see you guys Monday with Cass. Who we got Monday?
Oh, I don't know. Somebody really special, and I should know.
It's okay. Randy Sullivan.
Oh yeah, I gotta check back with Randy. We gotta make sure we got Randy. I will say this. Hey, Michael, if you haven't gone down these rabbit holes, I'm so WEC Method up right now. If you haven't looked up his stuff, oh my goodness. What was my other one? So WEC Method, the Z Health stuff. Yeah, that's it for now. I'll tell you more things, but
love it.
Yeah.
Send me stuff. Yeah.
All right, guys. This is awesome.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Have a good weekend.
Appreciate it, guys. Have a good one. Good luck.
All right. See ya.